The NBA trade deadline is something that we as NBA fans look forward to every single year. At this point, it's something like an NBA holiday for a lot of us. And for the past few seasons now, we've been getting spoiled at the trade deadline, seeing superstar players moved. You, of course, this last year have Kevin Durant and TJ Warren being moved from the Brooklyn Nets for Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson. And then, of course, in 2022, we had one of the most insane trade deadlines that we had ever seen in NBA history, seeing James Harden and Paul Millsap move from the Brooklyn Nets to the 76ers for Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, and Ben Simmons. You, of course, had the Mavericks trading away Kristaps Porzingis to the Wizards for Davis Bertans and Spencer Dinwiddie. And probably my favorite trade in this entire deadline was the Indiana Pacers and Sacramento Kings trade, where you would see Tyrese Halliburton sent to the Indiana Pacers in exchange for Domantas Sabonis. And though we didn't see a superstar player moved in this year's deadline, there were still a few trades that I feel like were very impactful for a lot of this year's true contenders. So I decided to go through and grade some of the trades in this year's trade deadline. I won't be grading every single trade, though we will be covering a lot of them. So if you enjoy this kind of content, be sure to like and subscribe. As always, I'm Frank Thomas, this is Off the Backboard, and let's get right into today's video. Now, before we get into grading these trades, there's just a couple of things that I want to talk about first. First, it's going to be the teams that didn't make any moves at all this trade deadline, because there was a lot. And then second of all, we're going to be talking about, the non-impactful trades that I feel were kind of just to make a move, to not have the fan bases on their necks. But first of all, we're going to get into the teams that didn't make any moves. We're going to start with the Los Angeles Lakers, the Golden State Warriors, the Chicago Bulls, Atlanta Hawks, Cleveland Cavaliers, the Denver Nuggets, the New Orleans Pelicans, the Orlando Magic, the Sacramento Kings, and the San Antonio Spurs. Now, I'm going to break these into a couple of categories: teams that should have made a move and teams that should have stayed pat. Now, starting with the teams that I feel shouldn't be too devastated that they didn't make a move in this deadline, we're going to have the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Denver Nuggets, the New Orleans Pelicans, Orlando Magic, San Antonio Spurs, and the Sacramento Kings. Now, getting started with the Cleveland Cavaliers, Denver Nuggets, and the Sacramento Kings, the reason that I don't feel like they should be making any moves right now is simply just because they already have really solid rosters going into the playoffs. As for the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Kings, I know that they've both been dealing with injuries, so that's why they've been having a lot of rough patches in this NBA season, but that's still not a reason to go be making any trades. And the Nuggets, they're just, of course, defending champions, so you're not going to want to shake that roster up at all. So the Pelicans were one of the harder ones. I didn't know if I wanted them to make a move or not, simply just because I'm not sure if I'm the biggest believer in this Zion and Brandon Ingram duo. And they're an extremely deep roster, so they of course had a lot of pieces to move. But I feel like I would rather wait until free agency to try and make something shake if you're going to make a trade or something, or if you're going to bring something in. I know that they're not going to go into a full-on rebuild just because of all of the talent they have on this team, but I would rather retool in the offseason so you don't throw off any sort of chemistry that you have right now. So that's the reason that I didn't want them to make a move. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, you're going to have the San Antonio Spurs and the Orlando Magic, the Orlando Magic, I know they had a really strong start to the season, and they might even be able to make a playoff push if all of their guys can stay healthy, or play-in push, I should say. But they've just been dealing with a lot of injuries and things like that, and I don't think it would be worth it to trade away any of the talent that you have on this roster right now, considering you have a lot of young talent to try and make a push this late into the season. And then you of course have the San Antonio Spurs, who are sitting at the 15th seed right now. 2.5 games back from a team that lost 28 games in a row is absolutely insane, and there's no way that you're going to be able to rekindle your season and win any games by making a trade. I know that they were in trade talks for Trae Young and things like that, but in my opinion, you would want to lose as many games as possible and try and get a high draft pick. But up next, we're going to have the teams that I feel should definitely have made some sort of move in this deadline. We're of course going to have the Los Angeles Lakers, the Golden State Warriors, the Chicago Bulls, and the Atlanta Hawks. Now, for the Atlanta Hawks and the Chicago Bulls, these are two teams that I feel are just failed experiments. I've spoke on the Chicago Bulls a few times on this channel, the big three in Nikola Vucevic, Zach LaVine, and DeMar DeRozan. They definitely needed to get one of those guys out of the door this season. I thought that the suitor was going to be Zach LaVine, but of course he went down with that foot injury. I'm not sure if there was any suitors for Nikola Vucevic or DeMar DeRozan. I know that there was a couple of rumors to have him going to the Golden State Warriors, but I just don't see how that would have worked out for either team. Then, of course, you have the Atlanta Hawks experiment with DeJounte Murray and Trae Young. Two guys who I thought when they first paired together it was going to look really well just because on paper it looks great. DeJounte Murray, of course, the youngest player to ever make an all-defensive team. I thought that defense was going to work really well alongside Trae Young. But this team is another team that just has a ceiling that I feel like they've reached already, and they just needed to make something shake. But then, on the other hand, you have the Golden State Warriors and the Los Angeles Lakers. And I have zero idea why neither of these teams made a trade this deadline. On one hand, you have Steph Curry and the Warriors, who it is just sad watching Steph do all of the work for this Warriors team night in, night out. Now, I know that Jonathan Kuminga has been having an amazing stretch of games his past 12 games. I think he's averaging like 25 points on amazing efficiency or something close to that. But at the end of the day, no one else on this roster has been producing. Now, I know that you have the quotes from Klay Thompson saying, you see me, you see Draymond, you see Steph Curry, you see our record in the playoffs, I'll always believe. I just have no hope in this roster to make any sort of noise in the playoffs. So they needed to make something shake to get something around Steph to hopefully make a push into this year's playoffs because they're on the outside looking in the last time I checked. But you also have the Los Angeles Lakers, who pretty much same story. Bron's getting old. AD's doing what he can with the injuries that he's been dealing with. But no one else on this roster just seems to be playing winning basketball. It's the same story with the Lakers every year. We think they win the offseason. They bring in all of these guys. They don't perform well. And now at the trade deadline, they usually make all sorts of trades to try and shake it up. But this year, they didn't do anything. Get Steph and LeBron some help, man. I know that I'm more than welcome to usher in the next generation of basketball, but I would love to see these two generational greats be able to compete in their last years, especially since we've never really seen anything like this with guys their ages coming out and performing the way that they are. But without further ado, let's get into grading some of these trades. Now, what you guys are seeing right now are the trades that I decided not to grade, simply because I feel like they don't tip the needle any which way. So feel free to pause and check these out if you want, but let's get right into the impactful trades. Now, the first trade we're going to be covering is between the Dallas Mavericks and the Washington Wizards, where the Dallas Mavericks are going to receive Daniel Gafford, and the Washington Wizards are going to pick up Richaun Holmes in a 2024 first-round pick via the Thunder. For the Mavericks, I'm going to give them an A- on this trade, and for the Wizards, they're going to pick up a B. Now, the reason I decided to give the Mavericks an A in this trade is simply because there's really no losing this. Richaun Holmes was an end-of-the-bench guy for you, and the 2024 pick that you're giving up is via the Thunder, and we all know what the Thunder are doing right now. They're a great team battling for the number 1 seed, so that's obviously going to be an end-of-the-first-round pick. And you're bringing in a great center, a guy that's averaging about 12 points, 8 rebounds right now. Someone that's going to easily take the starting spot right now. Now, I know that Derek Lively has been playing great for them, but at the end of the day, he's still a rookie center, and I feel like Daniel Gafford is going to be able to play a lot better with Luka and Kyrie. Now, for the Washington Wizards, they're picking up Richaun Holmes and that 2024 pick. Now, I know, like I mentioned, it's going to be towards the end of the first round because the Thunder are so good, but a first-round pick is a first-round pick at the end of the day. We've seen studs come at the end of the first round, and the Washington Wizards just need all of the draft compensation that they can get. As we all know, this season for them has been atrocious. So that's why they're getting a B in this trade, just simply because it's not the best pick, but it's a pick. Richaun Holmes is the guy that's probably not going to see any playing time for them. And the Dallas Mavericks are getting an A simply just because they're adding more depth to a roster that really needs it and filling in a starting center spot for them. Now, the next trade we're going to cover is going to be between the New York Knicks and the Detroit Pistons. We're going to see the Knicks pick up 2 veterans in Alex Burks and Bojan Bogdanovic, and the Pistons are going to pick up Evan Fournier, Malachi Flynn, Quentin Grimes, Ryan Arcidiacono, 2 second-round picks, and cash considerations. Now, for this trade, I'm going to give the New York Knicks an A-, and the Detroit Pistons are going to receive a B-. Now, I just definitely got to say, the New York Knicks by far won this trade deadline for me. picking up OG Anunoby, Alec Burks, Bojan Bogdanovic. This team is easily looking like a real contender in the Eastern Conference for me. Now, I know you still have the powerhouse out there in the Boston Celtics, and I'm not sure if I see this Knicks team taking it to 7 games with them. But if they do end up meeting in a playoff series somehow, I just know it's going to be an extremely scrappy series. And as of right now, the Knicks are easily my second favorite to come out of the Eastern Conference. Now, on the flip side of this, you're going to have the Detroit Pistons, who pick up Quentin Grimes, a few role players, a couple of second-round picks, and some cash. Now, I don't love this trade for them simply just because they already have a couple of players who are trying to develop at the same position that Quentin Grimes plays. But I am excited to see Quentin Grimes play with a team that he has a little bit less responsibility and can, just play his game a little bit more. As I was mentioning, the Knicks are, in my opinion, a serious contender this year, so he was kind of regulated to just a catch-and-shoot role, and he wasn't getting up a ton of shots a game, so he wasn't exactly able to get into a rhythm that those shooters need. Now, with the Detroit Pistons, there will, of course, be a lot more opportunity for him, so I'm excited to see how he flourishes there. But he's not exactly a player that's projected to be an all-star or anything like that. Now, I know the Pistons didn't give up anything too crazy in order to bring in Quentin Grimes, but you would have just liked to see them bring in maybe a little bit more draft compensation or someone with just a little bit more higher upside because of the lows that they've been experiencing this season. But nonetheless, a decent trade for both teams, which is why the Knicks are walking away with an A-, simply because they're just adding to the depth of that already contending team, and the Pistons pick up a couple of second-round picks and a young player in Quentin Grimes. Now, the next trade we're going to cover is going to come from the Dallas Mavericks and the Charlotte Hornets, where the Mavericks are going to receive PJ Washington, a 2024 second-round pick, and a 2028 second-round pick, and the Charlotte Hornets are going to receive Grant Williams, Seth Curry, and a 2027 first from the Mavericks. Now, for the Mavericks, for this trade, I'm going to give them a B+, and for the Hornets, I'm going to be giving them a C+. Now, I like this trade for the Mavericks simply just because they're loading up on front court depth, something that they've really needed this season, with their main front court piece being a rookie in Derek Lively. They're, of course, trading away Grant Williams, who has had a few good games with them, but the experiment with that just obviously hasn't worked out. I've been seeing a lot of Dallas Mavericks fans calling for him to be traded in his short tenure with the Mavericks. Now, on the other end for the Charlotte Hornets, I haven't been exactly tuned into this team, their media, how they've been playing, but it was really weird to me when I seen them trade PJ Washington, simply just because he's a great player. And I don't know if it's just the scheme that they're running, he doesn't fit in, or he doesn't run well with LaMelo, or whatever the case may be. But it was a little bit shocking to see him traded. But they did pick up a 2027 first, Grant Williams and Seth Curry. That 2027 first, I'm not sure if it's the Mavericks or if it's coming from someone else. But if it is the Mavericks, I'm not sure how great that pick is going to be. Now, you never know what could happen. The NBA is a crazy place. Luka Doncic could be gone off this team by then. Kyrie could be gone. It could be a completely different team. And who knows, that maybe that first round pick ends up being the first pick. But just projecting, it doesn't seem like it's going to be a crazy good pick, just as long as Luka's out there still leading the ship out there in Dallas. And they're picking up an aging Seth Curry. Grant Williams hasn't been playing well with the Mavericks. Maybe he gets more opportunity with the Hornets. Who knows? But at the end of the day, it's not the best trade for them, hence their grade. But without further ado, let's get right into this next trade. So this next trade is going to be a 3-teamer between the 76ers, the Indiana Pacers, and the San Antonio Spurs. Now, the 76ers are, of course, going to pick up Buddy Hield via the Pacers. The Pacers are going to pick up Furkan Korkmaz from the 76ers, Doug McDermott from the Spurs, a 2024 second-round pick via the Raptors, a 2029 second-round pick via the Blazers, and cash considerations from the Sixers. The Spurs are going to pick up Marcus Morris, a 2029 second-round pick via the Clippers, and cash as well. Now, when I originally looked at this trade, there's, of course, a lot of pieces to break down, a lot of moving parts. But for my initial grades for this trade, I'm going to be giving the Philadelphia 76ers an A, the Indiana Pacers are going to be getting a B, and the San Antonio Spurs are going to get a B+. Now, first, starting with the Philadelphia 76ers, they're going to pick up Buddy Hield in exchange for Furkan Korkmaz, Marcus Morris, and a couple of second-round picks, as well as some cash considerations. Now, I feel like this is a great trade for the 76ers at the end of the day, as they're just adding a guy that's leading the league in 3-point percentage right now, so just an insane shooter. And like I said earlier, it never hurts to add more shooting to your roster, especially when what you're giving up is two guys that aren't getting a whole ton of minutes for you, and you're just upgrading one shooter for another. I know that Furkan Korkmaz was a good shooter for them, but at the end of the day, you're taking Buddy Hield over Korkmaz any day of the week. Now, and then you have the Indiana Pacers getting rid of the contract of Buddy Hield and picking up Furkan Korkmaz, Doug McDermott, a couple of second-round picks, and some cash. Now, at the end of the day, this has to hurt for the Indiana Pacers, as Buddy Hield has been playing great for them, but at the end of the day, I'm just not sure if they wanted to pay him. Korkmaz and Doug McDermott are two guys that are probably not going to see the floor for them and might end up getting bought out at the end of the day. So it's not a terrible trade for them as they pick up a couple of second-round picks, but again, hurts getting rid of Buddy Hield. And then you also have the San Antonio Spurs, who give up Doug McDermott, a guy who wasn't seeing a whole lot of time for them, for some cash considerations and a second-round pick. I'm not sure if Marcus Morris is actually going to play for them. Again, another guy that might be going into the buyout market. But two solid trades for these teams. Not the best trade at the end of the day for the Indiana Pacers. Not a super impactful trade for the San Antonio Spurs, but, you know, a second-round pick and some cash for a guy that doesn't play a whole ton for you. But the Philadelphia 76ers are the main winner of this trade, obviously. Picking up a shooter for a contender is always a good thing. But without further ado, let's get into the final trade of today's video. And last but not least, we're going to have a trade between the Charlotte Hornets and the Oklahoma City Thunder, where we're going to see the Thunder receive Gordon Hayward, and the Hornets are going to receive Vasilij Micic, Tre Mann, Davis Bertans, a 2024 second-round pick via the Rockets, and a 2025 second-round pick via the 76ers. Now, for this trade, I'm going to be giving the Thunder a B+, and the Hornets are going to be getting an A. Now, this is a trade, when I first heard about it, I wasn't 100% sure how I felt. Simply because I'm not sure how Gordon Hayward raises the ceiling of this Thunder team. We're already great as is, and he's extremely injury prone, so it's going to be hard to know when he's going to be there for us, when he's not going to be. And I'm a huge Tre Mann fan, even though he doesn't get a whole ton of minutes. I know that this was our first season with Micic, so I didn't get to see a whole ton of him. But the time that he was here, he was an extremely solid role player for us, decent shooter, great passer, as all of those EuroLeague guys are. But for the Hornets, they're getting a stud in Tre Mann. It's a guy that they're going to get a lot of value out of, and he's going to see a lot more opportunity over there. Micic, of course, is just a guy that's going to play his role coming into the NBA really late in his career. But for the Thunder, I feel like this does raise our ceiling slightly. We have a defensive rebounding problem, and of course Gordon Hayward is not going to completely solve that problem, but he gives us a little bit more size. What I'm really interested to see, though, is what Mark Daigneault is going to do with these lineups, because as of right now, we have 6 or 7 guys that are worthy of being in the starting lineup every single night, and a lot of them are playing around the same position. We, of course, have Lou Dort, we have J-Dub, we have Gordon Hayward now, we have Josh Giddey, so just really interested to see what happens there. But overall, a great trade for the Thunder, even though it hurts to see Tre Mann and Micic go. And a great trade for the Charlotte Hornets, just because, again, I'm a huge Tre Mann fan, and I have a good feeling that he's going to do great things over there. And that is going to do it for me, y'all. I just want to say thank you so much for watching if you've made it this far. And if you enjoy this kind of content, we are on the road to 100 subscribers, so be sure to drop a like and subscribe. Check out my last video, the top 5 NBA birthday performances of all time. I feel like that's a great video, and if I'm being honest, it's kind of flopping right now. So help a brother out and be sure to go check that one out. Again, I'm getting out of here. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.